It's time to start.
Hello again, everybody, and welcome to Stanley's Stinkers, a unique look at college football where we pick the losers. That's right, the losers. Each week we'll look at 20 of the biggest games, we'll break down the teams, we'll analyze the coaches, and we might even flirt with the cheerleaders. But in the end, we'll predict the losers, or in this case, the stinkers in each of the contests. Stay tuned because this week's games are coming up. The first week of the college football season is in the proverbial books, and there were definitely some surprises. With that said, it's time to pick a new group of losers in college football because we don't care who wins, we care who loses. We predict the losers each and every week. Last week, we only missed 3 picks out of 20. This week, we hope a new class of losers will make us the winner. This week's games: Western Kentucky at Alabama. The Crimson Pachyderm made easy work of the Ann Arbor Polecats last week, and it looks like they've silenced some critics. Still, there may be some big questions in T-Town that needs to be discussed, like where will the next national championship trophy go in the showcase, or how big does the next trophy case need to be anyway? But before those questions are answered, Western Kentucky comes in, and it'll be up to Alabama to bulldoze a bunch of Hilltoppers from the Sun Belt Conference. From where I sit, it's hard to pick the Hilltoppers when they play against the Mountain Toppers. In a blowout, Stanley Stinker, Western Kentucky. East Carolina at South Carolina. The forlorn fowl from South Carolina actually managed to put a smile on the old ball coach last week, but it could have come at the risk of losing their number one QB. Connor Shaw was banged up so bad against the Commodores that he may not be back at full speed for a new bunch of seafaring characters at Williams-Brice Stadium this week. We may get a good look at the backup, but there should be enough go in the running game to cruise past this one. Last week it was the officers. This week it's the Pirates. Batten down the hatchlings. Arr! Stanley Stinkers, East Carolina. Washington at LSU. Les Miles and his Bayou Bengals ended a long offseason last week with a blowout win against North Texas. Their competition this week, a bunch of sled dogs from Washington lost their offensive coordinator to Alabama in the offseason, but still they managed a convincing win over San Diego State in their opener. Washington has a pretty good quarterback, and he certainly will test the Badgerless LSU secondary. And while there remains plenty of questions in the Bayou, LSU has still got plenty of talent, and they can't be intimidated by a bunch of Huskies. Stanley Stinker, Washington. UTEP at Ole Miss. Texas El Paso held their own last week against a highly touted Oklahoma team on the road, and this week they take on a lesser-ranked Ole Miss team. The Rebels, meanwhile, ride high after a one-sided win over Central Arkansas. Based on conference affiliations, it's hard to take the Gold Diggers over the Insurgents, but the Surge is going the wrong way in Oxford. With Mike Price on the hot seat in El Paso, new Ole Miss coach Hugh Freeze will cool it off at least one more week. In an upset of sorts, Stanley Stinker, Ole Miss. Miami at Kansas State. The Stormy Ibis was supposed to be in a downward spiral this year due to heavy NCAA sanctions and rebuilding, but Miami went into Boston last week and brought back a convincing win. Meanwhile, Kansas State comes into this game with a win and a top 25 ranking to their credit. The classic tale of the cat and the bird might play out in this game since it is in Manhattan, but hey, this is another Manhattan, and these cats are wild. Stanley Stinker, Miami. Stay tuned, sports fans. We'll have even more losers coming up in just a minute after a word from our sponsors. Stanley Stinkers is a free podcast because we have a few really good sponsors. Why don't you take the time to look at our sponsors page? Click on the sponsors' names for more information. Stanley Stinkers is brought to you by Passion by Eve, educating and enriching relationships. AnytimeCostumes.com. With Halloween coming up, you can shop for thousands and thousands of children's and adult costumes and get 15% off. AnytimeCostumes.com. CBSSports.com Fan Shop. Tons of top-of-the-line football gear plus NHL, soccer, MLB, NBA, and even NASCAR. This is not your typical fan shop. In the Hole Golf. If you play the game, you'll need to get the ball in the hole. That's what they do at In the Hole Golf. Check out the new line of GPS systems at In the Hole Golf. 5 Front PR. when it's time to move your company from the forefront to the five front. Call the experts at 5 Front PR. And Russell Athletic. Check out the new line of camo gear at Russell Athletic. Why they even have camo underpants. Not sure why, but they have them. Russell Athletic. Now back to the losers at Stanley Stinkers. Iowa State at Iowa. The Cyclones pulled off a win against Tulsa last week and head into Iowa City, hoping the winds will blow just as hard when Herky the Hawk plants his flag in the pregame ritual. This game is about bragging rights, and Iowa State seems to come up big when it's time to blow their own horn, just like last year against Oklahoma State. They have a prize for the winner in this one. It's called the Cy-Hawk Trophy. It's ugly. The weird thing is nobody really likes the way it looks. Nobody takes it home. Nonetheless, the winner gets to brag and the loser gets to stink. It ain't an upset. Stanley Stinker. Iowa. Vanderbilt at Northwestern. When Vanderbilt and Northwestern take the field in Illinois for this one, the brains will be as mighty as the brawn, and that's saying a lot. The Wildcats from Evanston have been bowl eligible 8 times in the last 10 years, while the crew from Nashville restructured their ranks last year for only their 3rd bowl trip in 30 years. Vandy took South Carolina to the wire last week and gained a lot of confidence in the process, but will that confidence help the crew on the shores of Lake Michigan? You've got to have a lot of smart peels for this one. Stanley Stinker, Northwestern. Auburn at Mississippi State. The Striped Cats from AU did all they could last week to bring home an upset against Clemson, but despite the loss, it was still a hypothetical moral victory for Coach Chiswick's Cats. Mississippi State, meanwhile, practiced their tiger hunting skills with a big win over Jackson State's Cats. This week the Tigers bigger, but State is hoping to avenge a couple of close losses in the past to the Tabbies from the loveliest village. Bulldog faithful hope the cowbells bang just as loudly with the conference coup de cat. Stanley Stinker, Auburn. Florida at Texas A&M. Hurricane Isaac postponed A&M's opener last week, which gave Coach Kevin Sumlin a little more time to get ready for the Swamp Lizards. Florida, meanwhile, was still trying to figure out their starting quarterback in an ugly win against Bowling Green. This week it's the historic and intimidating Kyle Field for Florida, where the spirit of the 12th man is a strong tradition. With a solid offense, it will be hard for Florida to overcome the extra preparation and tradition that the home team has. Welcome to the Southeastern Conference, A&M. Stanley Stinker, Florida. Georgia at Missouri. UGA coach Mark Richt needed last week's game about as much as a bulldog needed a bone. With his young pups pulling away in the second half against Buffalo, it was clear that UGA had overcome their off-season aggravations. Missouri, meanwhile, was off and running with 62 points in a win against Southeast Louisiana. This week, the competition heats up for the first ever SEC game at the Zoo in Columbia. Georgia already had a top-rated passer, and now they have a runner to balance the air assault. Murray and Gurley. Murray and Gurley doesn't sound real catchy, but that's the offense the folks in Columbia, Missouri will see a lot of this week. Look for a lot of points on the scoreboard. Stanley Stinker, Missouri. And while we're at it, here are a few other games that caught my eye this weekend. Clemson clips the Ball State Cardinal Wings in Death Valley. UCLA squeezes the Orange in Syracuse. Florida State skins the Savannah State Tigers. Arkansas tames the Tigers of Memphis. Georgia Tech hoses Presbyterian. Nebraska shucks UCLA. Stanford exercises the Duke Blue Devils. Tennessee beats Georgia State. Arkansas roots out Louisiana Monroe, and Kentucky rebounds with a win against wrong way Andre Parker of Kent State. He's the one who returned a fumble toward the wrong end zone in his team opener. Well, that's it, college football fans. 20 more games and 20 more losers. Remember, it's not whether you win or lose. Yeah, it is. We covered that last week. Of course it's about winning and losing. That's why they play these games, and that's why I pick the losers each week on Stanley Stinkers.